Goals. We love to set them. But when it comes to making systems to track our progress toward goals, not so much. If you've already downloaded the Goals Hub template, you already know me, but for everybody else, I'm Dave, also known as the Notion Coach, and I create resources for freelancers, creators, entrepreneurs, and startups around Notion. And when we talk about goals, this is something that can positively affect both creators and companies alike. And in this particular template or example, we are incorporating OKRs, which is objectives and key results, and can sometimes feel like a very mechanical, almost like robotic process. And the results kind of show that whether you're a company or a creator can take more than one quarter, maybe 2 or 3 quarters, to really get a handle on the process, on everything from creating an objective, defining how you're tracking your results through key results, and also reflecting on how a particular quarter went and what are you prioritizing and focusing on going into the next quarter. So this dashboard is meant to be a space to not only organize all these things and see how they're connected, but from a creator standpoint, how can you use this space to plan, prioritize, and reflect on your goals so that we go from making goals at the beginning of the year to, and maybe forgetting about them, to making a goal and then using or leveraging particular systems to make sure that you're either making progress or you have some kind of visualization on where you're making progress and where you're not, to be able to make some decisions on what projects to prioritize, where to spend more time, more energy, more resources. So let's jump into it. So what we're going to do now is really just navigate this dashboard and get a better understanding of where these databases are, how they're connected, and most importantly, how we can start to think about customizing this to fit your personal workflow or the workflow of your team. I'm actually going to go all the way down to the bottom of the dashboard to this databases section. If you've used Manifest or one of the previous templates that I've released, I like to separate out these high-level databases so that we know if I want to go into that original database and start making changes on properties we want to track, or maybe deleting some content or some information, I know that this is the place to go. And instead of making changes in a linked view of a database. So if we go back up to this upper part of the dashboard, these are all essentially linked views to those original databases. And we know that they're linked because they've got this little arrow here. And we'll talk about how to create a linked view in a bit. But those are all being pulled in from these original databases at the bottom. But let's just go through quickly and get a sense of what's happening with each of these. So the journal database, in the dashboard, it's filtered to only show journal entries for a particular quarter. So if we're imagining it's the start of quarter 2 or quarter 3, what we would want to do is, let's go into the future a little bit and say it's the start of quarter 3. So I'm going to go into the filter and say that we want to filter, we're going to remove the quarter 2 filter and instead set it to quarter 3. And if you notice, we've got the save for everyone, which is also a new feature. So if this is for personal use, you want to save it so that this view shows up similarly when you open it up next time. If you are testing something out and you want to revert it back to the previous version, you can click reset. So we're going to save that. And you notice we're starting with a blank slate. We have no journal entries here. So if we add a journal entry, so we're going to say daily meditation, and we're going to set this as an intention, as a type of journal entry. Here you'll notice that this is already preset to the third quarter because of that filter. So we don't really have to edit anything there. And then in the template, we have these categories, which I would definitely suggest reviewing and defining. If side hustle doesn't really apply to you, or content creation, we can change these to other categories. And if we assign, for example, purple to a different category, we'd want to make that change across objectives and key results, but we can start to leverage that color coding so that we're communicating what categories these items belong to. So we'll put this at health, and now we have that show up at the top left within that journal section. If we're thinking about the sequence of going from big goal to quarterly objective and more granular to key results, the first place to start is in this goals section. So as you notice, this is not filtered. So this is goals for this particular year. We've got 3 already present in here. So if we say open one of these, we've got grow your audience and meaningful relationships. This would be actually, I think, under side hustle. So we'll edit that out. And again, if you see that arrow, that means that we're looking at a relational database, which means that there's an area database and an objectives database that this goals database is talking to. And this allows us really awesome opportunities to filter data by these relations. So it could be a little bit tricky if you're new to databases, but the benefits just far outweigh any challenges at the get-go, just to be able to create these custom views and also avoid that like manual entry of, that you would have with setting up a tag or, just writing plain text. So if we're going through the sequence of goal setting, starting with annual goals, even if we're midway through the year, definitely helpful to think, where do we want to be in 12 months time or even longer? And then the next step would be getting into the quarterly objectives. So a little bit of background on objectives, just based on resources that are out there, specifically on OKRs. Objectives should be slightly outside of your comfort zone. So if we achieve 85% of what we set out to, that's considered a win or a success. And they want to be, we want these to be more qualitative because we have those key results to really get more into detail in terms of numbers and metrics that you're going to use to really kind of visualize your progress and define how you're doing toward that objective. So if we open this up, let's go ahead and filter this also by quarter. So we'll say quarter is quarter 3, and we've got a blank slate here. I'm going to go ahead and save this. So we've got this set up, and thinking through objectives, I'm going to kind of refer to my annual goals in terms of, how can I get more specific? What are things that I want to focus on, this quarter that lead me closer to that annual goal? So let's just go in here and create one as an example, and we'll go with the grow your audience and meaningful relationships. So one objective we can say is launch a Notion creators community. You'll notice here that it's also pre-tagged to the 3rd quarter, which is great. Here we want to tie this to a goal. So we're tying this to that one level up from where we are. And again, relational databases, magic, I can pull this up and we have that connection, which is going to be useful, throughout the dashboard. Status, we can set this at not started because we're not at the start of quarter 3 yet. Key results, we'll have an opportunity to fill this in. You can see this is pretty empty, so we'll have some items for that. And then confidence level, this is really just thinking through how are you feeling in terms of confidence about this particular objective. And there's different levels, so we can think somewhere in the middle, a lot going on with the idea of launching a community, so maybe 50-60% confident there. And again, that same color coding system applies here. So any of these databases are kind of in sequence so that we can start to define what areas we're looking at. So here we'll set this to side hustle, and we're good to go. We've defined that objective. So if we go back here, just to check out this goal, you'll also notice that the objective shows up here. So when we are at the end of the year, at the end of the quarter, we can start to see all of this data in one place through that relation that we set up. So we've got an objective for quarter 3, and now what we want to do is get more granular and define some key results that we would want to hit to meet that objective, and really prioritizing what those key results are. So this is kind of like the step before creating projects with clear start and end dates. So in key results, we've got sections for each quarter. So we're going to move to quarter 3, and let's just double check that this is filtered correctly. So this is accurate, so it's set to quarter 3. One thing that you'll notice, just as a side note, is if I open up this key result, we actually don't have a relation to the quarter. What we're doing is we're rolling up this property from the objectives. This is getting pretty into the weeds a little bit, but another benefit of using related databases is that not only can you connect two databases together, but you can start to pull in specific properties from another database, so we don't have to duplicate or have multiple properties. So in this case, we would have a quarter property for every single database. Instead, we're just pulling that quarter in from the objective that's already set up. So we set it once, and we can kind of pull that in from, in this case, the key results. So we've got this quarter 3 key results, and we're going to decide on 3 key results that are the most important to, in this example, launching a Notion creators community. So we're going to create this key result, and we'll start with the first one. And again, with key results, some things to keep in mind is we want these to be measurable, and we want the value to be, again, slightly outside of our comfort zone, where we've got some level of confidence that we'll be able to hit that target, but it's also has a level of ambition that is pushing us to get there. So let's just go back in here. We've got quarter 3, so key result. So first key result is going to be for quarter 3, say 50 beta testers for community. And we're going to set the objective. So again, related database, we're connecting to here, and you'll notice it auto-populated that quarter 3 space, which is great, saved us some time. And the status, we're going to say, we're going to add a new status actually to say future, because it's not part of this quarter. But if we're thinking through, we're starting a new quarter, you would archive any old or outdated key results there. And we've got 3 number properties here, so this is going to be helpful to have that visualization. So the first part is the starting number that you are at the beginning of the 3rd quarter. So we're going to set this to 0. We're going to set the current also to 0, and the target to 50. So if you'll notice, if we update this to, let's say, 5, you got that updated progress bar here as well. And projects we haven't defined yet, but we're going to get into that next. And here we're going to assign the category, and this is really just for color coding. I'm actually going to change the side hustle here because we're in a demo to Notion community. Make it a little bit more specific. So we've got that here. I'm going to assign that to the key result, and let's come up with 2 more key results. So one's going to be, say, 3 live sessions to promote community. Again, measurable, specific, and set that objective again. Status feature 003, and don't have any projects yet, but that's going to come next. And let's come up with 1 more for this. We'll say 3 blog posts about Notion community. And then we'll set this again, objective here, feature 003, and we'll define some projects next. So we've got 3 key results, and as you start to populate this, if we're thinking about defining, could be anywhere from 3 to 5 objectives for the quarter, and the key results, this will get longer than this demo, but it also provides a good instant visual to say at the end of, say, each week or every other week, we can update these values to see visually how are we progressing toward these objectives, which is kind of a nice way to just get that immediately. The next section, which is projects, this is where we're going to get specific into collections of actions with a clear start and end date that directly tie to a key result. So this is really just to frame what projects we're working on, what we're prioritizing, and making sure that those projects feed into a larger goal. So that's what this phase is all about. And if we go into the project's database, we can see that it's sorted, in this case, by status. So active projects are going to show up at the very top and work their way down to upcoming, not started, archive, things like that. And there's also a second sort by priority. So if you've got a weekly planning routine, or if you're using the Manifest Weekly Planner, part of that is defining priorities for projects at the beginning of the week. So there's a space to do that here as well. So we're going to create a new project, and you'll also notice here the same kind of color system works here. So we'll go into this one, and we'll actually change this to Notion Community. And if you're using the template, definitely take a look at the categories, and feel free to remove categories, add in additional ones, or change up how they're labeled to fit your priorities and your areas of focus. So we're going to create a new project here, and we'll relate this to one of the first key results, 50 beta testers for the community. We'll set the timeline. If we're jumping ahead to the future to July, we'll say we're starting this on the 4th to the 5th, and then we're going to have an end date of the 22nd. And we'll define this as Notion Community, so we've got the same color palette. And for this project, we'll say launch email campaign, actually say launch landing page. For community, status we'll set to not started, and priority, this will be the highest priority for the beta testers. So we've got this project in here, and we'll see it shows up here. We can delete these to kind of clean that up. And now we've got a project that's tied to a specific key result, and which feeds into a quarterly objective. So just to get a sense of what the benefits are of using a system like OKRs, and how OKRs fit into a larger strategy around goals. But these are really the key databases as part of this dashboard. The last part, which is the journal, this is a space to not only set intentions, but to capture any ideas or reflections on how the quarter is going, and have those available at the very top. So, if we open this up, we can see here that, let's just make sure that this is filtered to quarter 3, which it is. I'm going to open up the journal, and we'll say make a reflection journal post or entry. And kind of as a mental reminder as to why this is a priority for the quarter, we can say that this is a reflection, and it's not tied to any of these databases, because this is really just focused on the current quarter. And again, we'll update this side also to Notion Community, so that if you're using this and you're making some changes, that'll also show up here as a reference and as a reminder. And that also shows up here, so we can see our journal entry in that space as well. So that's just a quick overview of how the goals dashboard works. If you use the Manifest Weekly Planner, or if you use Manifest OS, this is using a lot of the same databases. So this is also meant to be a way to map out what databases we're looking at, so that ideally you're creating linked views of your current databases rather than creating a duplicate for things like projects or objectives or key results. So let me know what you think. Questions, drop them in the comments. And if you found this helpful, definitely subscribe so you can see future videos, and see you in the next one.